कुंज बिहारी
Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari
जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari
जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
Yashodanandan Raja Janaranjana
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
Yashodanandan Raja Janaranjana
जमुनाधिरावनचारि
Yamunatira Vanachari
जमुनाधिरावनचारि
Yamunatira Vanachari
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
Gopi Jana Ballava Girivaradhari
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन
Raja Janaranjana
जमुनातीरावनचारि
Yamunatira Vanachari
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे हरे
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे हरे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
जय राधा माधव श्री राधे
Radha Madhava Shri Radhe
जय राधा गोविंद श्री राधे
Radha Govinda Shri Radhe
जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा सुभद्रा मई जय सुदर्शन जय जय कृष्ण बलराम जय वृंदावन धाम जय नित्यानंद राम जय निताय गौरांगो जय गौर हरि जय 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 प्रभुपाद जय शिल प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Mr. Paramahans, Paravrajak Charya Status Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki. Sri Sri Nitai Gauranga Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Devotees, apne kamonachan. Tik ache. Okay. Apka swast kaisi hai. Okay, so we're going to continue our little seminar on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Haribol, there's so many interesting teachings. We're going to start today by describing a particular pastime, a very interesting pastime from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, from the 9th chapter of the Antya Kanda, Chaitanya Bhagavat. But first of all, please repeat after me. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Yes, so devotees, we are going to read some verses and describe some things from the 9th chapter of the Antya Lila Chaitanya Bhagavat. And we are going to begin with verse, what is it now? It looks like, yes, it's 113. And initially here, this is, well, who is it? It's either Lord Chaitanya himself. It's actually Vrindavan Das Thakur speaking. First of all, glorifying devotional service. If someone has devotion, then everything is well. But without devotion, even the position of a king is inauspicious. Dhanayasha bhogayara achaye sakala bhaktiyara naitara sabha amangala. If one has wealth, fame, and material enjoyment, but is bereft of devotion, then everything is inauspicious. Yes, and, the next verse. And if one is so poor that he has no food for a day, but he has devotion to Lord Vishnu, then he is the richest person. Yes. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gives a short purport. Let me just read the whole thing. If even a poor person, unable to accumulate food, is inclined to the service of the Lord, then no one can be as rich as him or her, because the Lord is the proprietor of all opulences. And then Bhagavatam verse 1:827 is quoted, Namo kinchana vittaya nivrata gunavrittaye atmaramaya shantaya kaivalya pataye namaha. My obeisances are unto you, Krishna, this is Queen Kunti, my obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists. Okay. So then the pastime develops. So Lord Chaitanya is somewhere, and there's a group of devotees there, nice sort of Brahmin devotees, or just devotees of different types. And the devotees, of course, are very excited that the Lord is there with them. And now they have the opportunity, well, particularly for householders, it's a very nice opportunity if some special devotee is there and they can invite the devotee to have prasadam at their place. Yes, so therefore, what is stated is, as the devotees invited the Lord to take his meal in their houses, the Lord took the opportunity to teach them all this topic about having devotion, and then you're just so nicely situated that if you don't have it, then you can have anything, everything material, but you are badly situated. And interesting, let me just mention one thing. So these devotees, they want to invite the Lord to eat in their houses, and it's very nice. Krishna conscious desire of householders. Prabhupada, one time, this was in Bhaktivedanta Manor, I was there, and Srila Prabhupada was there, and there was one devotee there who he was from South America somewhere, and he had been a leading, staunch brahmachari, really like one of these heavy brahmachari types. But now he had decided he wanted to become a householder, which, having been a sort of heavy brahmachari, was a bit embarrassing. So what he did, on the top he would wear a saffron kurta, and dhoti he would wear a white dhoti, sort of transitional stage or something like that. And Prabhupada was there, and this devotee took the opportunity to ask Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, please explain to me, what are the duties of a grihasta, a householder devotee? And Prabhupada took one look at him and said, A householder must be generous. Don't be miserly," and turned around and walked away. And this devotee thought that, well, that wasn't very much. He was hoping for some in-depth instruction about some details of how to be a proper Krishna-conscious brahmachari, householder. So later means maybe a week or so later, he was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and he took the opportunity, hoping to get a more in-depth answer. He took the opportunity to ask Prabhupada the exact same question again. "Srila Prabhupada, please explain what are the duties of a grihasta?" And Prabhupada again looked at him and said, "A grihasta must be generous. Don't be miserly." And Prabhupada turned around and walked away. So, you get the message. Yeah. Very important. Because grihasta life, particularly when you got children, but even when you don't, but particularly, when you got one, and more particularly when you got two, and then, 3 or 4, then it can be quite challenging how to maintain the family just in terms of food and a place, some sort of reasonable place to stay. And therefore, the householders may become anxious or step by step more anxious as the children, step by step, the number increases. But the fact is, and Prabhupada made it very clear on those 2 occasions, within just a matter of days of each other, to the same devotee, that for a householder, generosity and not being caught up in, the needs of the family, and what am I going to do, and how could I give some charity, because I need all the money I can get for the family. So these things happen. Sometimes it appears to householder devotees, but really it's very important to keep in mind what Prabhupada said there about being generous and not being what's the term? Anyway, not being miserly. Not being miserly. Yeah. When I was a child, let me make not exactly a confession, but let me just tell you one thing. When I was a child, and I mean a child, I used to read comics, Donald Duck and Scrooge McDuck. Are you familiar with these? You are? What a shame. Anyway, the infiltration of American culture. So Scrooge McDuck, he was really wealthy, and his greatest pleasure was he had one room, it was full of money, cash, and he used to go and dive into it and swim through the banknotes and the money. That was his just happiest experience. So anyway, back to the topic under discussion. So there's all these devotees. As I recall, it doesn't say exactly where this happened, but anyway, there's a whole lot of devotees there, and they're devotee householders, and they want to invite the Lord to have prasadam at their place. So then, when the Lord was invited in that way, he smiled and said, first, you must become a Laksheshwara. A Laksheshwara. Yes. It's a combination of, at least in Sanskrit, Laksha, 100,000, and Ishvara, meaning the master of or possessor of. Yes, and in common usage, it means someone who has 100,000 rupees. Now, of course, nowadays, if you have 100,000 rupees, anyway, you need to become a crore Ishwara. Otherwise, you can't be taken seriously in financial terms. But going back, I mentioned, was it yesterday or sometime I mentioned, how when I first came to India, it was 1976, there was 8 rupees to the dollar. Yeah, and now there's, 100 or something along those lines. Poor old rupee. Yeah, but in those days, a lakh of rupees, it was real money. It was really, really big money. I remember when I first visited Russia, and they just switched over to being capitalist, and the whole place was bankrupt and just devastated. You could buy a small house for 15 rubles. 15 rubles at the time was $15. You could buy a house, like a simple house, like a village house, for about $15. Haribol. Times have changed. Now you can buy a house for, a house like that for, many, probably a few 100,000. Yeah. That's the artificial nature of the economic system we live in. Years ago, you could buy a tomato or ek alu for what? I don't know. Some paisa. Now, ek tomato is a lot more. I don't know how much. But back, you could buy a kilo of alu for less than a rupee. Prabhupada talks about it. Some paisa. Yeah. So now a kilo of alu, well, how much does it cost? You, Kitna? Tis, rupee. Now, but previously, for maybe tis paisa or less, you could buy a kilo of potatoes. So what does it mean? Does it mean now the potatoes are so much better? They're 100 times better. You just eat one little alu, and that's it for the day. You don't need to eat anything more. Well, no, unfortunately, that's not what it means. It just means that there's this artificial system of supply, of demand and supply, or supply and demand. And as a result, everything, most of you are quite young, at least, 30-ish or something. By the time you're my age, maybe 40 years, 50 years, 8 kilo alu will probably be, a good few 100 rupees, and not just tis rupee. Yeah. And that obviously will not mean that now, at that time in 50 years, the alus are so good, they're worth 100 times more. So, right, this is what Lord Chaitanya said. And the term Laksheshwara, I guess they had rupees in that day, 500 years ago, I don't know. Or maybe they were using some other unit like little shells or whatever it may be. But you needed 100,000 of them, then you're a Laksheshwara, and you were quite a wealthy person. And so now the devotees heard that, and they were shocked, because they thought that our Lord, what's happened to our Lord? We thought he was, totally materially unattracted, but now he only wants to associate with rich people. Sometimes our movement is accused like that. In some places where we have a number of wealthy or at least reasonably affluent followers, and maybe they get special attention. They get gifts, they get regular visits, but your average little working class devotee just gets a Hari Bol, may not even get a Hari Bol at the Sunday program. So sometimes like that, we're accused of being attached to money because we give special attention to people who have it. And this is what the devotees didn't know what to make of this. What has happened to our Lord? And the Lord continued, I take meals only in the house of a Laksheshwara. So then the Brahmin, these devotees, they're Brahmins, they were just, kind of devastated, and they offered prayers to the Lord. Oh Lord, what to speak of 100,000? None of us possess even 1,000. And then if you're not going to accept our offerings of prasadam, let our households be burnt to ashes. It means like our lives are just worthless and we should give up our lives. So let's see. Then Lord Chaitanya says, do you know who is a Laksheshwara? And he explained, a Laksheshwara is someone who daily chants 100,000 holy names. Haribol. Which is, it's not exactly 64 rounds. You can do a calculation if you got your telephone there. Divide 100,000 by 1,728. Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai. Yeah, divide 100,000 by 1,728, because that's how many names are in one round. So if you do that, you come out with, I forget what it is. What is it? 57.8. Right. It's getting up around 64 rounds. And so Lord Chaitanya is kind of insisting on this. I call that person a Laksheshwara. I take meals only in such a person's house, not in the houses of others. So hearing this merciful statement of Lord Chaitanya's, those Brahmin devotees gave up their anxiety and they became very happy. They became joyful. Oh Lord! Well, Lakshanama Laiba Prabhu Tumikara Bhiksha Mahabhagya E Mata Karo Tumi Shiksha. Oh Lord, we will chant 100,000 names Please, therefore, take your meals in our houses. It is our good fortune that you are teaching us in this way. So, this is an interesting point, isn't it? Just in general, that Lord Chaitanya, and here it is, he's strongly encouraging, even more than encouraging, he's kind of, you could almost say, insisting. Everyone must chant, all devotees, if you want to be taken to be like a real devotee or something like that, you must chant what? 57.8 rounds. What's 0.8 of a round? Well, it's actually 96, isn't it? 108 divided by 8. Anyway, whatever it is, it is. So, and having said, so Lord Chaitanya, here he's making it very clear that, if you want some mercy, if you want me to take you seriously as a devotee, seriously enough that I will consider your cooking and your offering of what you cook pure enough and of, a spiritual quality enough that I will accept it, you have to chant 100,000 names. Otherwise, sorry, see you later. Yeah, when you come up to that level. And even having said that, of course we know Srila Prabhupada insisted repeatedly and probably maybe more than anything else he talked about, he insisted we chant 16 rounds. Yeah. But, it's quite a bit less than 108. But Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, he also, not insisting, but basically you could say, presented the idea that it is best or it is good to chant 100,000 names. It wasn't insistence like with Srila Prabhupada with 16. I think you're all well aware. He really actually insisted on not less than 16. And therefore, if you go to Gaudiya Math temples, I've been to a few, hardly any, frankly, but been to maybe a few over the years. And I remember being in the one, it's at Chatak Parvat in Jagannath Puri, that one. And there was a sannyasi there, not a disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, but, we started talking and he started complaining that these devotees, meaning living in the ashram there, their devotees in general, they don't chant 100,000 names. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, he didn't exactly order, you must do this, and if you don't, you won't get first initiation, which is what Prabhupada, one way of putting it, as how Prabhupada put it. But he definitely recommended to chant 100,000 names, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. So anyway, the sannyasi was complaining to us that these devotees, they just don't do that. In fact, he said, actually, most of them only chant 4 rounds a day. Talk about going from one extreme to another. And he was not happy about it. Prabhupada, now, it's mentioned here and there. The place where it's mentioned in most detail, in my experience, is the biography of Srila Prabhupada by Mukunda Maharaj, which you may have seen. If you haven't, you should try and get a copy. It's really interesting. It's called Miracle on 2nd Avenue, about the early days, because he was just one of the first handful of young people who joined Prabhupada. And there in detail, he describes conversation he had with Srila Prabhupada, that now everyone's chanting, everyone's got beads, everyone is chanting. Everyone means like 10 or 20 devotees, because that was the number of devotees in ISKCON at that time. And everyone was chanting on beads every day. So Srila Prabhupada, speaking to Mukunda Prabhu, or Mukunda Maharaj now, of course, Prabhupada said, yes, everyone should chant 100,000 names, or 64 rounds. And Mukunda Prabhu at the time was shocked. 64. She said, Prabhupada, that's just, it's not too much. We can't do it. It'll take all day, and that may not even be enough time. And Prabhupada, became thoughtful, and then Prabhupada said, all right, at least 32. And again, Mukunda Prabhu said, Prabhupada, it's just too much. We can't do it. So Prabhupada then said, all right, 16, but no less. 16, but no less. And, 16 is a quarter of 64, which is approximately 100,000 names. And we might well think that, Prabhupada has given us like an insufficient standard. 16 rounds, it's something, but it's not what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta recommended. And it's definitely not what Lord Chaitanya more or less ordered, or at least strongly recommended, to be a proper devotee. So who are we then, and what is our position? Anyway, I can read a bit from Prabhupada. I'll read a little bit. It's from Nectar of Instruction, in which Prabhupada addresses this point. But, one very important point is that a devotee like Srila Prabhupada, a devotee like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Srila Gaura Das Babaji, and these devotees in our, the main devotees at their times in our line, someone like Srila Prabhupada, he has a personal connection with Krishna. And, well, for example, I think I may have mentioned last time I was here, but one devotee was present, very senior devotee, was present with Prabhupada when Prabhupada was up on the roof of the Lotus building, when the Lotus building was the only building. And Prabhupada and this devotee and a few other devotees, they're looking out from the roof. And Prabhupada's saying, yes, look at this, how beautiful Mayapur is, so beautiful, it's just wonderful. And we will develop Mayapur. So the whole world comes, and the whole world will see that, Mayapur is so wonderful. And then Prabhupada said that, Krishna told me I must come. And I told Krishna that, my Lord, this world is so hellish. I don't want to come. And then Prabhupada said that then Krishna told me that you must come because the people need your books. You have to come. Interesting exchange. So like this, as devotees become more advanced, they develop relationships with Krishna. And, someone on the level of Prabhupada, by far the most advanced devotee of his generation, and what to speak of this time, Prabhupada had such a relationship. So if Prabhupada said that Krishna will accept us. If we do just 16 rounds, then we can accept that, okay, it's true, and not get into anxiety that we're in some lower category, and how can we be successful in Krishna consciousness? Yeah. Another time, you may have heard the story, Prabhupada was in Atlanta, and he was giving a class, and it was one of these, kind of heavier classes. And Prabhupada said to the devotees, if you want to go back to Godhead, you must be 100% pure, pointing at the devotees. Okay, 100%? Exoart, maybe. Anyway, at least 100. And then Prabhupada looked at the devotees, and the devotees were like, who, me? 100% pure? And Prabhupada, noticing that, they became sort of discouraged. Srila Prabhupada said at least 90%. But then the devotees were sort of the same, I don't think it's possible for me. At least 80%. Prabhupada, step by step, came down to 50%. Then Srila Prabhupada said, well, you just hold on to my dhoti, and I will take you back, because I have the key for the back door, Prabhupada said. In other words, when nobody's looking, he'll sneak us in there, into Goloka Vrindavan. So anyway, this is now, you can read this yourself. It's from the purport of Nectar of Instruction, Mantra 5. It's right there. The Krishna Consciousness Movement prescribes 16 rounds daily because people in the Western countries cannot concentrate for long periods while chanting on beads. Now, of course, Western countries normally means America is sort of the capital, and then Europe is next, and then other places, Australia, and those types of countries. But devotees, I don't know if it's good news or bad news or what it is, but India is rapidly accelerating in becoming a Western country. I mean, you've got some crazy young people around. You've got some. Yeah, unfortunately, India, the India of today, is not like the India of Prabhupada's time. And what to speak of the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta or the time of Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, so anyway, basically, Prabhupada says the Krishna Consciousness Movement prescribes 16 rounds daily because people in this age cannot concentrate for long periods while chanting on beads. Therefore, the minimum number of rounds is prescribed. However, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that unless one chants at least 64 rounds of japa, 100,000 names, he is considered fallen, patita. According to his calculation, practically every one of us is fallen. But because we're trying to serve the Supreme Lord with all seriousness and without duplicity, we can expect the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is famous as Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the fallen. This is us. Now, Prabhupada is speaking to us here in Newtown, Calcutta, today, the 3rd of February 2026. He's speaking to us. Yes, right. And there were cases. There's one famous case, I mean, not so well known, but a case. There was one devotee, his name was Jai Gopal in America. And he died in a traffic accident as a devotee, somehow. He was killed in a traffic accident. And he was just a young man, probably like 20s or late 20s at the most. And he was a householder. He had a wife who was a young woman, a devotee, initiated devotee. And when he was killed in this traffic accident, she was devastated. And so she went, and Prabhupada met with her, and he tried to encourage her. And Prabhupada told her that even though Jai Gopal was not an advanced devotee, he'd only been a devotee for a few years, but he went back to Godhead. And if you continue practicing, you can go back to Godhead and join him. Prabhupada said this. The girl went out, and some devotee, you know, in ISKCON, we have all sorts. Some devotee who thought he was pretty clever said to her, Prabhupada said that Jai Gopal went back to Godhead, but, obviously it's not possible, because he'd only been a devotee a few years. So, Prabhupada just said that. He just said that just to encourage you, explaining to the girl, which is not very nice, is it? Particularly seeing it's just a mental speculation. But then one other devotee who was in the room at the time when Prabhupada said that, and stayed in the room when the girl left the room, Dhanavir Goswami, he's written a book about Prabhupada. Anyway, he's written a few books. And in one of the books, he mentions this incident. And he says that after the girl left the room, Prabhupada having said that her husband went back to Godhead, Prabhupada said to those who remained that actually Jai Gopal was not really qualified to go back to Godhead, but Krishna made an exception for him. Yeah, and this, Prabhupada speaking, and who are we to say that, Prabhupada, how do you know that? So we should just, humbly accept what Prabhupada says. Yes, so therefore we can accept that even though Lord Chaitanya said quite strongly, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta said, as we read, what Prabhupada said, that 100,000 names is minimum, otherwise, you're just not up to an acceptable standard. But by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, invoked by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, if we carry on and chant at least 16 rounds, it's the minimum, it's not the maximum. Then if we do it really seriously, really attentively, and then, the rest of the time we do our service very seriously, like that, then we can be qualified, or Krishna may accept us back home in Goloka Vrindavan. One day, Mother Malati, very old Prabhupada disciple, said to Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, you say, if we just chant 16 rounds and do our service, follow the regulative principles, we can go back to Godhead. But Prabhupada, it sounds too easy. It sounds too simple. How could it be like that, in fact? And Prabhupada gave her one of his looks. And there was silence. And Prabhupada replied. He didn't get into some sort of explanation. Well, because it's like this and it's like that, and so on and so forth. And therefore, you may be able to go back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada just said, do you think that I would cheat you? So, you know, I mean, it's very deep. It's extremely deep. And Prabhupada was extremely deep, beyond really our capacity to understand his depth. So, devotees, let us carry on. We'll do one more. Yes. And this is a sort of bit of a heavy story, which I think you would know. It's from Chaitanya Charitamrita about Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was invited by the uncles of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami when Raghunath Das was still living at home. And they were like sort of pious household devotees and very wealthy household devotees. So they had a whole setup for programs and inviting lots of people. So they invited Haridas Thakur to come and make a program about chanting Hare Krishna. And they asked him, can you please, with great humility, they asked him, please come to our assembly and explain the glories of the holy names. So Haridas Thakur came, and different people were sort of, well, I don't know, suggesting, conjecturing, you could say, but just suggesting that, well, you know, holy names, yeah, you know what I heard? I heard that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, you're freed from all the reactions of sinful life. Someone else said, simply by chanting the holy names of the Lord, a living being is liberated from material bondage. That they're trying to glorify the chanting of the holy names. So then, having heard these suggestions, Haridas Thakur protested, these two benedictions are not the true result of chanting the holy name. Actually, by chanting the holy name of the Lord without offenses, one awakens his ecstatic love for the lotus feet of Krishna. And one becomes, really, even eventually comes to the point that one just chants like a mad person, just totally carried away and overwhelmed by it all. And then he explained further. As the rising sun immediately dissipates all the world's darkness, which is deep like an ocean, so the holy name of the Lord, if chanted once without offenses, dissipates all the reactions of a living being's sinful life. All glories to that holy name of the Lord, which is auspicious for the entire world. So, if you chant the holy name of the Lord once without offenses, all your, what to speak of being really into it, just once, then all your reactions are finished. And then Haridas Thakur explained further that, simple example, that as we all see, assuming we get up early enough in the morning, then as the sun is rising or about to rise, it is still beneath the horizon, so you cannot see it, but you can see the light coming at the horizon level and gradually increasing step by step. So Haridas Thakur explains like this, that when it comes to liberation, which is what these two devotees had suggested, they'd suggested if you chant the holy names, you get liberation, you get freedom from sinful reactions. It's liberation. So Haridas Thakur said Liberation is the insignificant result derived from a glimpse of the awakening of the offenseless chanting of the holy name. Just like when the sun is about to rise, it's still beneath the horizon, but you can see the light. And because you can see the light, the world starts to become lit up. And when the world just starts to become lit up, then the dangers of the night, like criminals and, nasty people like that who, they do their things often at night, then, you don't need to fear them so much because they're not active when the sun is up. So like this, just from a glimpse of the awakening of the chanting of the holy name, you get freed from all fears and you get liberation. And he went on talking about a Jamil that he chanted, trying to call his son, but he got liberation. And eventually, of course, he went back to Godhead. And its liberation is offered by Krishna to a pure devotee with no difficulty. It's just not a big thing. Like liberation, wow. So unfortunately, at that gathering was a person named Gopal Chakravarti, who was a tax collector, a wealthy man, and was very good looking. So he was very proud of his money, and he was very, very proud of his good looks. A youngish man. He was very learned, youthful. But when he heard this statement, that just a little glimpse of chanting gives you liberation, what to speak of total absorption, then this fellow protested, "O assembly of learned scholars, just hear the conclusion of the emotional devotee. After many millions upon millions of births, when one is complete in absolute knowledge, one still may not attain liberation. Yet this man says that one may attain it simply by the awakening of a glimpse of the holy name." And so a little back and forth developed between him and Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur said, this is not me. This is what Scripture says. This is what it says. So, how can you deny it? So things went back and forth like that. And that Gopal Chakravarti, he said, if a person is not liberated by, well, he uses the term namabas, which, you could say is synonymous for just a glimpse of the pure holy name. If one is not liberated by just a glimpse of the holy names, then you can be certain I will cut off your nose. Haribol. And Haridas Thakur said, look, if what I've said is incorrect, I'll cut off my own nose. And so, it was becoming a bit dramatic there. And people, the devotees gathered, they were on Haridas Thakur's side. So they started chastising this Gopal Chakravarti. Anyway, off he went, and Chaitanya, off everyone went. The whole meeting broke up because of the controversy. And then 3 days later, Gopal Chakravarti got leprosy. And his nose, he had a particularly attractive nose. How are your noses? We don't normally look so much at our noses, do we? Yeah, his nose melted and fell off, as did his fingers, because of leprosy. The Brahmin's toes and fingers were beautiful like golden-colored champak buds, but because of leprosy, they all withered and gradually melted away. Yeah. So anyway, later on, it's in Chaitanya Bhagavat, it seems that the same person, anyway, a person who was a devotee approaches Lord Chaitanya, and he has leprosy, very severe leprosy. Suddenly a leper appeared in the assembly and came before the Lord, and he threw himself on the ground and begged Lord Chaitanya, you have come here to free the conditioned souls from their sufferings, their distresses, and I am suffering so much from leprosy, so you please cure me of leprosy. And then Lord Chaitanya replied. You might expect that Lord Chaitanya would say, oh yeah, sure, no problem. But that's not what he said. Lord Chaitanya, in a thundering, angry voice, said, go away from here. Just seeing you incurs sin. Even if a very pious man sees your face, the day will bring him only despair. You are a wretched sinner and an offender of Vaishnavas. So this person has apparently, maybe he's the same one, but even if he isn't, he is a person who has offended, seriously offended a devotee. So, Lord Chaitanya says, much more suffering is in store for you. You cannot even tolerate this pain, you contemptuous rascal. How are you going to live through the sufferings in Kumbhipaka hell? If you want to know what those sufferings are, just read the last chapter of the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I can't remember exactly, but it's pretty drastic. Yeah. Yes. A Vaishnava is so pure that just uttering his name can cleanse the entire universe. One easily attains the inconceivable association of the Supreme Lord Krishna simply by serving a Vaishnava. In fact, nothing is superior to the worship of a Vaishnava. So anyone who offends a Vaishnava and criticizes him has to suffer terrible consequences, life after life. Your leprosy, oh no, he had offended Srivas, this one, Srivas Thakur, Srivas Pandit. Your leprosy is just a reminder of your offenses. The actual punishment is yet to come, to be meted out by Yamaraj. Therefore, I do not even want to see you, and I'm not the one to deliver you. So it might sound contradictory, Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. But then again, it's not, because the devotees are so dear to Lord Chaitanya. I mean, we cannot comprehend it, actually. I mean, just read these things. Mother Earth feels blessed when a Vaishnava dances on her. Just the very sight of a Vaishnava destroys nescience and sin and sin in every direction. So, yeah. Anyway, this is a warning, something educational. We should be very respectful and have a really nice serving attitude towards the devotees. Even, in Madhurya Kadambini, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about a a very advanced devotee who has all 26 qualities of a devotee. And then he says, there may be a devotee who has only one of the 26, and the other 25 he doesn't have at all, like humility and service attitude and speaking nicely, poetically, doesn't have these things at all. But he has one, the main one, Krishna Akarshani. He's attached to Krishna. So he says there that some devotees may look at that devotee and think, we can offend him, it doesn't matter, because he's just horrible. He's just really horrible. He never speaks nicely. He's intolerant, impatient. Sometimes he's offensive. And, so we can criticize him. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, no, we can't do that. That lack of qualification of a devotee cannot become an excuse or a reason for now criticizing or saying offensive things about that devotee. So we must remember that, and also be very careful when dealing with devotees, and careful to be very nice. And there's a lot we can say about that, but let me just conclude by saying Srila Jiva Goswami makes the point that serving a devotee is a more effective way of developing love for Krishna than trying to develop love for Krishna. So, statements of that sort we should remember and bear them in mind. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone? Ek prashna? Prabhu. Chaliye.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. So I have one question, like you were mentioning that if one chants the one holy name without offenses, then he becomes free from all sinful reactions.
Right.
But then that statement, it seems to be very lofty, because without offenses is something very big. It's not.
That's right.
So
you're right.
So like that can, I even to reach to that stage may take lifetimes.
Or two. But anyway, we should try. We must try. We must try. We have our 16 rounds at minimum, and they are just, each mantra is an opportunity to cultivate attention, attentiveness, and really giving our attention to the holy name, the holy names. It's like that. And sooner or later, I mentioned the other day, you remember, I'm pretty sure I mentioned here, Prabhupada was asked in Sweden, did I mention here at a university program? Prabhupada was at a university program. He said, he was asked, how long did it take you to perfect your chanting? Huh? And Prabhupada said 25 years. And then he looked at the student who was, 20-ish or student type age. And Prabhupada said, you have time. Time you have, but how you use the time, now that's another thing. Yeah. So yes, but it's a fact. It's just a fact that if a person, young or old, male or female, of any cultural, national background, just any human being chants a name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, actually without offenses, they're liberated. Yeah, Shastra says, how do you say it in Bengali? Bhagavat kahe. Is that the Bhagavat says? So you might think, oh no, what chance do I have? Might as well give up immediately. But it's meant to be encouraging that we just keep working on it. And by Krishna's mercy, even the most wonderful things can happen. And actually, sometimes by Krishna's mercy, all sorts of wonderful things do happen. You know what is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita in a few places. By the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, blind man can see the stars in the sky, a lame man can climb mountains, and a child can understand the conclusive truths of the Vedic literatures. And what's your name, Prabhu? Aapka naam kya hai?
Hari Om.
Hari Om. And by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Hari Om can chant the holy names without offenses, and not just once, but many times, and really get into a pattern of doing like that. But the mercy has to be there. It's not just if we work hard. We have to work hard. But it's just, the main thing is we have to get the mercy. Otherwise, just working will not be sufficient. You know the story, the Damodar lila, and they're the two fingers, right? The two fingers of the shortness of rope. And one finger is representing the effort of the devotee, and the other finger is representing the mercy of the Lord. And look at your two fingers, look at mine. You see, the mercy of the Lord is the bigger finger. It's bigger than the personal endeavor finger. Yeah. So ultimately, it's the main thing. Although, you know, your personal endeavor has to be there. You can't just say that, yes, Krishna, you want me to become Krishna conscious, so just go ahead, Krishna, here I am. Just do it. No, we got to try our best. One devotee said, we have to try as if it all depends on us. But we have to pray as if it all depends on Krishna. It's an interesting perspective. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.